Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Bonsoir, mes amis. Montreal Canadiens battled back in this one, but find themselves still in the L column. Yeah, it was an overtime loss. They gained a point, but let's be positive about this one because, frankly, I've got some numbers to throw at you. I know going over statistics is not exactly the most entertaining way to do things on video or even audio, but we got to talk about it because this game was a weird one, to say the least. There was some extreme positives coming out of it. Let's be real. Juraj Slafkovsky was absolutely incredible in this game. Lane Hutson as well. There was a lot of standout performances, despite the fact that it was a pretty messy game overall. And I think we can talk about the momentum swing that happened in the second period and why that happened and how it didn't really have anything to do with either team on the ice. But man, I'm tired of talking about refs. I really am. I feel like I don't ever want to talk about refs ever again, but they keep forcing the issue by doing their jobs extraordinarily poorly. So we do have to talk about them once in a while. They are unfortunately part of the game and they make themselves part of the game. I noticed when I first opened the window here, looking at the comments that have been left so far, Montreal MUFC says penalty shootouts were good for a while after it was introduced, but I think I'm sick and tired of those after nearly 20 years. And yeah, this is the 20th year of the shootout, I believe, right? Because it started in 05-06. So maybe it's the 21st year. It's a lot. I don't like it either. I think it's a momentum killer, honestly. Like, there's very few games, win or loss, where you watch a shootout and at the end of it, you're like, yeah, that was awesome. Like, there's the odd great move, but overall, they're kind of boring. Like, I just want to see more 3-on-3. All right, I'm going to do a little run through the comments here quickly before we start, and then we'll do our first introductory partner situation, and then we'll start the first period. We got a great show for you tonight. We're going to talk about how the Habs earned their way out of trouble in this one. We're going to talk about the amazing work from Slafkovsky and Hutson. And then I want to finish the show with the third segment about Zach Bolduc because, I don't know, there's something there. I feel like we got to talk about it. We'll probably have some differing opinions. We'll see. I think we can have a good discussion about it, and we'll try to run through this quick because it's a bit late. Long game, going all the way to a shootout and a late start for the Amazon Prime days. And frankly, this morning, I did not know there was a game. I thought it was a Tuesday game. So I was a little bit out of sorts. So hi, Claire. I see Claire Capoletti is here. Ethan is here. Yeah, I can't stand shootouts, he says. Joe the Snoop, go back to games being a draw, 1 point each. They'll never go back to being a draw now. America can't handle ties. Piano Matt says, seriously, what's wrong with games ending in ties? You know what? I'm fine with it too. But America does not like ties. Claire says, feeling 1 foot has stepped away from the edge of the cliff. It's a start. You know what? That's how we're going to start the show, Claire. Before we get into it too deeply, though, we got to tell you about Inchu Bijou, our first partner, our big partner here on the Game Over Network at Game Over Montreal. Inchu Bijou is a phenomenal company, a woman-owned entrepreneurial business, a jewelry business that is queer-friendly, inclusive, and frankly, they make cool stuff. Like, every single thing they make is a statement piece, which is really impressive work when you have things priced from like a couple bucks to thousands of dollars. Every piece has unbelievable attention to detail. So let's learn about Inchu Bijou.
At the famous chateau at 4000 Rue Saint-Ambroise lies one of Montreal's coolest secrets, a glamorous Gothic jewelry store owned and run by women. Inchu Bijou isn't just a business. They've built a community that supports bold creativity and expression. When I was first introduced to founder Astrida Pisigomian's shop, I was floored by the detail, vision, and scale of what she's built from her own mind. I don't think anyone would call me goth, but I know an innovator when I see one. Along with building their own business, Inchu Bijou also hosts markets for vendors in their space called Marché Maleficarum, boosting their whole community. If you don't live in Montreal, explore inchubijou.com, where you'll find over 800 designs that range from affordable to bespoke. Check out Inchu Bijou right now, a Game Over partner from the beginning.
Bonsoir, welcome back. This is Game Over Montreal. I am Andrew Berkshire, your host for this evening. And while we're shouting out cool Montreal companies, I'll do one that's extremely ineffective at this moment in time, but I'm drinking from this cup. You can't really see it on the light. Not really. It's Aylwin Barbecue, which is a little outfit at the Atwater Market here in Montreal. They do like barbecue, as you might expect, but they're only open in the summer. They have a permanent spot now at Atwater, which is a little bit different. It's not their barbecue place. They do other stuff, but man, this place is so good. It's so good. You can only really get it in the summer at Atwater Market. I highly recommend. Really great pulled pork sandwich. All right, before we get too deep into this, I do want to go over a few things for this game. Obviously, there was a line shakeup with the injuries. Dach is now out 4 to 6 weeks. Newhook is out 4 months. So the forwards have been shaken up. 2 of the lines that have been pretty consistent most of the season have now been wrecked, and they pulled apart the top line as well in this one. And I saw a lot of concern online when they pulled that top line apart about maybe the idea of demoting Juraj Slafkovsky after he was I don't know if he was benched per se, but he was sat for a bit in the last game. And that is clearly not the case of what happened here. What I posted on Blue Sky was that it seemed to me that this is like a survival mode move, and they were trying to use Juraj Slafkovsky to insulate Kapanen and Demidov on the defensive side, because they're not, like, defense isn't really their game. And they thought that Cole and Nick could hold it together, and they throw Bolduc on there, see if they could figure it out. And the bottom six is kind of a mishmash. I really didn't think the Evans, Anderson, Wall line would work, but that line was actually incredible in this one. They had something like high 80% expected goal share, which is the same as the Slafkovsky line, I believe. And Lane Hutson as well was around 85%. Now, that Slafkovsky line with Demidov looked in moments magical. Like, they were really, really strong. And Slafkovsky had a game to remember. But we're going to talk about that in the second segment. I did like some of the tinkering by Martin St. Louis in this one. And I think it's important that he has some wins per se, not like team wins, but like he needs to have some coaching wins coming up here shortly, because frankly, he's had to wear a lot of these losses. I think a lot of them have been on the coaching staff more than just the players in this last stretch. So it's nice to see some tinkering working out in their favor. You know, as much as this season is a new test or a batch of new tests for Martin St. Louis with real expectations, the fact is he's been pretty good at weathering crazy runs of injuries over the last several years. So maybe he's got something there. Maybe he's got a lot better of a grasp on how to weather injuries than yours truly, or many of us in the fan base here. All right, let's go through the comments again quickly. Montreal MUFC, a draw after an OT period with 10 or 20 minutes at 3v3. Greatest NFL game this season ended in a draw. Yeah, I think the players don't want like a 20-minute 3-on-3 because it's exhausting, but I do think 2 5-minute periods would be doable. But I know that the NHL also doesn't want to deal with the broadcasters and how many things they might have to push. But I don't think a 5-minute OT is necessarily more time than a shootout. So if they replace that shootout with a second 5-minute 3-on-3, I don't think we're going to be upset. I don't think the broadcasters are going to be upset. I don't think the players are going to be upset, even though it's a little bit more work, but I think it'd be fun. Keck Shows says, hi, hello, my friend. David W. is here. Shootouts are controversial, even although the one I watched was fun, even with that shootout, a loss for the Habs. Yeah, I mean, it can be fun, but most of the time it's kind of boring. Joe the Snoop says, I find nothing wrong. In fact, the true result, both teams equal. I don't know what that means, Joe, but feel free to elaborate. So I'm going to ask you all a question to start things off. How did you find this game? Did you find this was a game that rebuilt some of your confidence as a Canadiens fan? I saw Claire saying that she was 1 foot stepping away from the edge of the cliff. I think a lot of folks are feeling that right now, but I'd love to hear from you all and figure out what you think. Ethan says the call-ups were disappointing. I don't know. I've liked Jared Davidson so far. Waugh had that moment where he fumbled the puck on, I believe, the third goal for Columbus, or maybe it was the second goal. But again, 3 people on the Canadiens fumbled the puck on that play, and sometimes bounces just happen. And the Canadiens have been getting killed by bounces lately. I don't think the call-ups were a big problem, to be honest with you. Ethan says, league wants more goals. 2 5-minute achieves this. Yeah, it does. Also, calling penalties would achieve more goals, but they don't seem to be intent on doing that either. Montreal MUFC says, speaking of call-ups, I can't say I was particularly impressed with the two names who got the call after Davidson. Yeah, I mean, Waugh is not put in a position where you'll see the best of him, I think, with Anderson and Evans, but that line still did okay. He said, and MUFC added, nevertheless, I hope Waugh can perform and be more consistent this time. I'm under the impression this could be his last opportunity. I think it's a bit early to say last, but if this is an extended opportunity for Waugh, he does need to make a push because there's too many guys in Laval who are pushing their way either equal to him or past him on the depth chart, that he's kind of getting the bonus of being the elder statesman and he gets to be called up. Like even already Jared Davidson getting the call over Waugh should have been a bit of a wake up call for him. But yeah, he's the feet are a little bit to the fire, but I think Waugh has enough utility that it's probably going to be okay. All right, let's see what else we got here. MFM, hello, my friend. Piano Matt says, a little it feels like every breakdown is deadly. Columbus had the saves in those cases, but Montreal didn't. Yeah, I mean, Greaves was making saves, but he wasn't holding on to the puck. There were so many loose pucks in this one for the Canadiens to find a way. Joe says, I was answering someone who said there was nothing wrong with the draws. Okay. No worries. Not one power play, so it is unknown if the changes to the power play were helpful or a hindrance. Yeah, that's a good question. We'll have to wait for the next one. Keksho says, yes, this game was the stabilizer for me. Not critical situation at the moment, but now we need to push it to the other side. Yeah, I think this one probably would have been a much more hype game if not for those extraordinarily soft calls from the refs on the Canadiens in the second period. Now, before we get too deep into that, yes, Brendan Gallagher got away with an unbelievably egregious high stick. Yes, it was a mistake also. It wasn't on purpose. He was trying to high stick a guy in the face. But in the third period, he did get away with a brutal high stick. However, Columbus got away with everything all game long. And just to put in context how much Columbus got away with, because it's not like I'm sitting here tracking every single missed call, but just based on how often they had the puck. So the Canadiens' control of expected goals in this game at 5-on-5. First period, 67%. Second period, 54%. Now, most of that happened around the two soft calls to, I think it was, I can't remember now who got the calls. Sorry, guys. I think one was Anderson. I could be wrong. And one was Suzuki. Which, again, Suzuki took far more slashes than he gave out today. Oh, the other one was Davidson, sorry. Davidson got called for his stick being parallel to the ice and having no impact whatsoever on the play. A couple shifts after Suzuki was very clearly tripped with the puck, causing a possession change. There was trips and holds and hooks and slashes. And, man, in overtime, Lane Hutson took so many slashes in the feet. Every time he was near the puck, they were slashing, hook, and hauling him down. Caulfield took several slashes. They didn't want to call it one way. That's the simplest you can put it. Third period, the Canadiens controlled 84% of the expected goals. Overtime, 100%. Scoring chances were 5-0. In this game, overall, at 5-on-5, the high danger chances were 13-6 for the Canadiens. Scoring chances, 31-17. I don't know what you could say to justify a team being so thoroughly dominated at 5-on-5 and calling 0 infractions on them. That is crazy to me. I saw Arpan Basu tweet or post wherever that the Canadiens couldn't struggle on the power play if they didn't force the Columbus Blue Jackets into taking any penalties. And I think this kind of framing has to be thrown out. Because if we're putting how many power plays a team draws as like whether or not they earned it, but then this is the result of the game. Overall in this game at 5-on-5, the Canadiens controlled 70% of the expected goals, 74% adjusted for 74% at even strength. That includes the overtime. If you aren't drawing a call but you control the puck or control the high, like the scoring plays at a 74% rate, that's not on the team controlling the puck to draw the penalties. That's on the refs to call them, because there's just no chance in any sport that you can dominate to that degree and receive no infractions. So that's a tough one. That's a tough one. All right. Piano Matt says, I hate having to talk about the refs too, but maybe if they were good at what they did. Yeah, that's the thing, right? I don't want to talk about them either. I want to talk about Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki and Lane Hutson and Noah Dobson and Jakub Dobeš and Marty St. Louis. That's what I'm here for. I'm not here to watch the ref show. Unfortunately, they make themselves part of it. MFM says, I thought the team deserved a better result, but I was relieved by what I saw one game at a time. That's it, right? As long as they don't go out of this one feeling like they let themselves down or something. Like, I'm hoping that Jakub Dobeš isn't tearful in the post-game presser tonight. It's probably a little bit less comfortable in Columbus as opposed to Montreal to like show himself emotionally. And I'm not making fun of him, by the way. I honestly find a player being open enough to show his emotions to the fan base, to the media, is really brave and like really a sign of strength more than anything. And I respect the hell out of him for putting his emotions on his sleeve like that and letting us see how he feels, because it's tough, man. Like, you're playing in front of 22,000 people directly, and then you've got millions watching at home. There's a lot of pressure on goaltenders. And tonight, I didn't think Dobeš was very good, but he stuck with it. He gave them a chance to win. I really feel bad for him on that third shootout goal, because he's so close, man. So close. And that first move from the Columbus skater, I forget, Wyatt Johnson, I think? No, Wyatt Johnson's Dallas. A different Johnson, or a Johnson, I think. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. I don't blame Dobeš for letting that one in at all. That was an unbelievable deke. All right, Trinka says, really thought Slaf took the most out of the change of line mates. Yeah, we're going to talk about that coming up in a moment. Claire agrees. Thank you, Claire. And Ethan is spot on. A team that spends so much time in the D zone is expected to be penalized more. Yeah, 100%. Like, and it's not like the Canadiens had no extended possessions in the offensive zone. You can't get numbers like that without extended possessions. Like 31 scoring chances to 17. You could say that Columbus sat back, but like if they sat back on a 1-goal lead, that's just dumb. It's just dumb. You have to give the Canadiens credit for pushing tonight. Down several players. Kent Johnson, that's the one, Trinka. Thank you so much. You know, you go live and immediately my brain is like, I only know the Habs. I do know more than that, I promise. Kextro says, is it really good for an NHL player to show emotion? And it is really good for an NHL player to show emotion, and the reaction I saw from a lot of fans and traditional media is why we might never see it again. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, I feel like in a way, I don't have the pulse of the worst people anymore because I'm not on Twitter, and I see more of the good from the Habs fan base than the bad. But you can tell that this year, now that there's expectations, people are a little bit less patient. And we saw that a little bit last year when they stumbled out of the gate, that people were kind of freaking out a little bit. Fans were not happy, but the Canadiens pulled it together, and there was still a level of patience that was there. Like, there was bitterness over the in the mix comments and not being in the mix, but the Canadiens forced themselves into the mix and got straight into the playoffs. And I think that really like calcified the fan base to be on that positive note. But this year, the expectations are not just to be in the mix. They're full on to make the playoffs. So as soon as things started falling downwards, you could see there's this rage building in the Canadiens fan base. I've seen calls for Marty to be fired. I've seen calls for Kent Hughes to be fired, but not so much on the social media that I frequent, just other people sending me stuff. David W. says, different from ice hockey, 1 5-minute OT in preseason and regular season play in NHL games, but in the postseason, as many 20-minute OTs as are necessary until the game-winning goal is scored. Oh, this is part of another comment. I apologize. MFM says, don't forget to smash the like button, everyone. That's right. And if you really like it, please subscribe as well, because it helps us out. We are slaves to the YouTube algorithm, unfortunately. That is the only way that we can grow, is for you to help us out. Piano Matt says, it's a good reminder that this is the youngest team in the league and they're still building. Yeah, and I think what should give everyone hope in this is that the Canadiens aren't just like a young team trying to find it. They're a team that's been through pretty rough situations already and found their way out to the other side. So they have experience already in battling through adversity. both while they were rebuilding and last year. Like digging themselves out of that hole that they made for themselves early in the season was an incredible feat. And they've proved that they can do that and they can hang with the best. All right, let's switch over to the second period here, and we're going to talk about Juraj Slafkovsky and one Lane Hutson. But before we do, I got to show you another one of our partners, Le Saint Motel, so please stick around and hear about them.
While you're browsing into Bijou's goth shop, head next door and discover Montreal's most unique selfie studio. Whether you're looking to take some banger pics of your Halloween costume or cosplay, or you want to make some memories with friends, Le Saint Motel has you covered. Experience their bombastic decors that are always changing, hop in the ball pit, and take advantage of their extensive and flexible on-site lighting. Head to lesaintmotel.com to book your time in the studio, book private time where you and your friends will be the only ones allowed in, or book the space for an event. The dedicated, caring staff will make sure that you have a good time. I do have one warning for you before you book. If you have kids, they won't want to leave. Whether you're at Le Saint Motel or in Bijou, tell them Game Over sent you.
Welcome back to Game Over Montreal. I am your host for the evening, Andrew Berkshire, the founder of the Game Over Network, which you can always support by subscribing here at Game Over Montreal or any of our affiliated YouTube channels, as well as throwing us a like on every stream that you see, every short that you see, because it really does help us out. Also, I don't know if you guys knew this. This is like random aside, but our channels got mass reported last week, and all of our channels on the whole Game Over network were deleted by YouTube. I woke up, saw this, and like had a blind panic thinking that we wouldn't be able to get them back. And I filed appeals on all of them, which I had to do individually 8 times and make the argument that they made a mistake. And luckily their probably AI review process agreed that it was indeed not accurate. But somebody mass reported us for like frauds and scams, which is always fun because that's what we're all about here on the Game Over Network. Frauds and scams, apparently. Not really, YouTube. Don't delete our channels again. Keksho says, Slav and Demidov, go back to it, please. We have 4 clear top 6 guys. Splitting them in pairs instead of a 3-1 makes so much sense. You know, it really did make sense in this game. However, Suzuki and Caulfield struggled without Slafkovsky. And it was interesting going into the game because there's always like the Slaf defenders and the Slaf doubters on socials in this fan base. And it seemed like it was pretty evenly split between whether this was a demotion or, you know, they thought that maybe Slav and Demidov might be pretty exciting. It was exciting. It was exciting. It was really impressive what Slafkovsky was able to bring to that line. I assume, I don't have intimate knowledge here, but I assume that before this game, when the lines were decided, Marty went to Slafkovsky and said something along the lines of, this is not a demotion. We trust you to be the play driver on your own line. Make these guys work better. And man, did he ever. Because he came into this game on a damn mission. And it was one of the first shifts of the game. Ivan Provorov leveled him. Absolutely lined him up and leveled Juraj Slafkovsky. I think it was like just as he received a pass. He got set up for a suicide pass and he just went right through the chest. It was a clean hit, but it looked like Provorov took the most out of it. Which, you know, we know how much Ivan Provorov hates man-on-man action, but apparently he was willing on this one because Slav is just so damn handsome. But Slafkovsky popped right back up and immediately set up like 2 scoring chances. Like he just is not bothered by physical stuff anymore. In his rookie season, remember, he would get knocked down and it seemed like he would get really discouraged. Now he still gets knocked down because sometimes he plays off balance, but he doesn't really seem to care. And yeah, Montreal MUFC says Provorov hurt his own arm while hitting Slav. I agree. That's what it looked like. He looked like he jammed up his arm or maybe his wrist. But Slav is solid, man. And he had an unbelievable game. Not just on the physical side. His skating was excellent. Like his puck control was excellent. There were so many moments in this game where Slafkovsky himself dictated the flow of play. And that's something that we've seen him do with Cole and Nick. We haven't seen him do it I wouldn't say on his own, right? Kapanen and Demidov are very good players, but neither of them are 5-on-5 play drivers as of yet. Like it would be unfair to expect that of Demidov at 19 years old. And Kapanen is a different kind of player. He's more of like a net front guy who can add a lot in transition. Slafkovsky was dominant tonight, like absolutely dominant, as was Lane Hutson. Now I saw somebody posting on Blue Sky earlier during the game that Hutson was on the ice for something like 30, 37 or 35 shots for and 8 against. Like Hutson was a menace tonight. And you could tell that the plan to contain him was just to cheat, because that's all they did in OT. Every time Hutson had the puck, there was a stick in the skates. There was slashes, there was hooks, there was holds. Like they could not contain this guy. And it was wonderful to watch, because the last several games, it seemed like the Canadiens haven't been able to build up the momentum that they're used to building. It seems like they haven't had the puck control when those guys are on the ice that you want. They'll have it on the power play, but they just zip it around and do nothing. This game, they were much more incisive. How many times did you see Lane Hutson drive the net tonight? Like it was a lot. He was cutting through the middle to try to get chaos going. It was very effective. I'd like to see him do more of it. All right, let's go to the comments here quickly, see if there's anything here. Ethan says, Bolduc was not great on the first line, to be honest. That is the stitch, and we're going to talk about that in the third segment. But before we switch over to the third segment, because I want to give Slav and Hutson their time, I just want to hear from you guys. Like, what are your thoughts on the way that the youth movement has taken hold on this team? Because as much as, you know, right now, Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki are the backbone of this team, it's becoming clear that at a certain point in the very near future, they're not going to be alone. Now, I like the comment from Keck Shows earlier saying that there's 4 clear top 6 guys on this team. And I would say like Demidov right now is he's not on those guys' level in terms of like 200-foot play, right? Like he's getting better. Like his defensive game has dramatically improved from game 1 to game 19 in this season alone. If we take it from last year when he first came in over from the KHL to now, like it's almost night and day. But he's not like a big defensive play driver like Cole Caulfield has turned himself into, right? Like he's not the disruptor, right? He's getting there, but we have patience. We can wait for that guy. Slafkovsky is very clearly entering that era, like that area himself. And Hutson, I think, is already there. He was there by the end of last season. He was on the same footing as Caulfield and Suzuki. Then you have like Demidov, who's going to be insanely good. Like we can tell that. The youth movement on this team is adding not just like to the core, but like to the top part of the core in a way that I don't know if people expected this soon. So that's so exciting to watch. And this game got me back excited to watch the Habs after the last several games. I was like, man, this is tough. This is tough to watch. Even the Dallas game where they lost big, but I thought they overall played decently outside of not covering the late man on the rush every single time. But overall, I thought they played a decent game and got really, really unfortunate or like really, really unlucky in that one. But it's been tough to watch them unable to get their mojo back. And it seemed like in this one, they finally got it. And maybe it's just a matter of a couple goals going in. Claire Capelletti says, I think Slav enjoyed being the daddy on the second line. Yeah, he liked being the old man, right? It's fun to be the one who has a little bit of responsibility. And it's funny. That's one of the things about having kids is that you learn how much that responsibility actually means to people. Like, it's not necessarily like, it's not like you need to wash your dishes or whatever, like not that kind of responsibility. But like this year for my son, for his birthday, one of the things that we gave him was his own house key and a really good, solid physical map of Montreal, because he wants to have a little bit more freedom to go around without us, around the outside, walking on his own. And I was like, well, first you got to figure out where you're going. It's a big city, easy to get lost. But also I wanted him to know that he has our trust, to be able to unlock doors if he's outside the house on his own. He's the one who unlocks the door when we come home from picking him up at school every day now. And that was the gift more than anything else that he got that clearly meant a lot to him. It cost a couple bucks. It wasn't a big gift, but it's big for him because of what it represents. And in that same vein, whereas last year, when they had to split up that top line early in the season when things were going terribly, they took Cole and Slafkovsky off and put them with Christian Dvorak, if you remember. Now, Slafkovsky is trusted to do that on his own. And part of it is probably because Demidov is so good, of course, but it's also because Slafkovsky is now a trusted veteran at 21? That's not a bad thing. All right, Ethan agrees with Montreal MUFC, says you need those leaders in the room who know the league. Because he said, I would be happy finding 2 more guys with decent NHL experience to help the youngsters. Yeah, it might be something that they look into down the stretch, especially with these injuries, right? I mean, Newhook missing 4 months. It honestly crushes me to hear that he's out for so long. The Dach one is tough too. At least it's not the knee. A fracture is probably a lot easier for him to get over, and he was just making it back in a big way. He was looking like the player he can be. But the Newhook one, man, he started the season on such a heater. He has the opportunity of a lifetime to play with young Demidov and Kapanen, who's just finishing like crazy, and to get dealt that card to be out for 4 months on a stupid play. It wasn't that he got hit or anything like that, just tripped on an icing. It's so needless. And it is a real heartbreaker. So you don't know how he's going to play when he gets back. 4 months is a long time to miss. So they could be in the market for adding, especially if the young kids don't push their way through. But I would be surprised, honestly, if this goes on for a while, if we don't see a couple different tryouts here and there, and see if some guys can add something and stand out. But they need to figure out something here. Trinka says the Olympic break is actually kind of a blessing with the injuries because I don't think they'll feel like they have to rush anyone back, and then they'll be full of fresh legs. That's a really good point. And I'll raise you another one. The Canadiens will be a rested team because their players seem to be continually underestimated. I don't think there's any chance that Nick Suzuki isn't making Team Canada this time around. If he doesn't, that would be a really tough thing to justify. But the rumors from insiders so far is that Cole Caulfield is not going to make Team USA. And it seems like Lane Hutson's kind of on the outside looking in too. And to that I say good, because Team USA will be easier to beat. And also, listen, Cole, Lane, Canada loves you. You live in Montreal. After a certain amount of time, you can follow the tradition of great Montreal Canadiens players like Andrei Markov and get your Canadian citizenship. You'll be welcomed here with open arms forever. You don't have to live in that trash can called the USA. You don't have to associate with them. We'll love you guys. Wrap yourselves in the maple leaf. You don't need no stars and stripes. Besides, it's all going to hell in a handbasket there anyway. Come over here, stay here, and don't ever go back. You don't need to. What's there? Bring your families up here. We'll take them. Don't worry. Denny says, with Laine and Newhook out for so long, I'd really like them to find someone who's a bit better than Veleno for 4C so Dach can play wing. He's really good at it. Yeah, I mean, they do need something over Veleno no matter what. They really do. Piano Matt says, Suzuki will make Team Canada if they like winning hockey games. Yeah, I mean, there's been lots of situations with Team Canada where you would think they would make that kind of decision. But remember, this is the same group. There's been some changes, but essentially, like philosophically, Hockey Canada is the same group that left 18-year-old Sidney Crosby off in favor of Todd Bertuzzi and like Kirk Maltby and Chris Draper. Actually, I don't think it was Kirk Maltby that one. I think that was like the World Cup. But Draper was definitely there. Shane Doan was there, but Sidney Crosby, not good enough. So never underestimate Hockey Canada's ability to shoot themselves in the foot. Montreal MUC says Cole Caulfield can do a reverse Brett Hall in a few years. Hell yes. Hell yes. And he also says Bill Guerin is salty against the Habs for 2002 and 2010. Of course he is. Also, Bill Guerin sucks. Like, look up some of the stuff that he's not been willing to talk about or confront out in Minnesota. That would have been Bertuzzi post-Moore. Yes, sir, Piano Matt. That was Bertuzzi, who was no longer even a good player after Bertuzzi Moore when he came back after, I guess, a year off. He really only got suspended for 17 games because of the lockout. The NHL is really bad at figuring stuff out. And even like, I don't think Bertuzzi ever should have played another game after that incident because it was so egregious. I think you lost the privilege to be a professional hockey player in North America after doing that. But he's now coaching as well. And I'm like, you're letting Todd Bertuzzi coach child hockey players. Like, what are we doing? And I saw Hockey Night in Canada this week was like pushing that as like a good thing because his team's doing well. I'm sorry, man. I don't give a crap if Todd Bertuzzi is a good technical coach. He shouldn't be coaching kids. Piano Matt says that was McSorley levels of brutal. Yes, it was. All right, let's switch over to talking about Zach Bolduc because we got to talk about Zach Bolduc, and we'll start the third period here. But before we get into Zach Bolduc talk, we have to tell you that there's ways to support the Game Over Network if you really enjoy us. You can always like the show. This is Game Over Montreal. I am Andrew Berkshire. You can like this video. You can subscribe. Right now, we are inching closer to 1,000 followers, which I think is a mark that we are going to hit very soon. And it kind of, once we get there, I think it will propel us further because YouTube really like gates everything, both monetization and how they push things in the algorithm based on the amount of followers and interaction you have on your channel. So the more we get, the more they will push us and the more we will grow. Joe the Snoop says Caulfield and Hutson not playing for Team US is a great thing for the Habs. Exactly, right? They'll be rested. Put them on recharge and then play full charge when the season resumes after the break, the business end of the season. Yeah, on that part, I almost hope Nick Suzuki doesn't make it. But like just on a personal note for him, I know it's important to him and he deserves to be on Team Canada. Like right now, since the Four Nations face-off, I don't think you could name 6 Canadian players who've been better than Nick Suzuki. And I'm including defensemen. Like that's how good he's been. It's really, really damn impressive when you put it all together. All right. Zach Bolduc. Oh, wait. I was supposed to tell you all how to support us. Head to Patreon. We have a Patreon. There's a link on this page. Whether you're listening on a podcast or watching live on YouTube or on replay, there's also a link on our official website, thegameovernetwork.com, many of them actually, and on this YouTube channel itself. If you click the drop-down thing that allows you to see our whole bio, you'll see a couple more links in there for our Patreon, for our Discord, which you can join. You can send me a message on Discord. If you tag me, I will 100,000% answer. It is my mission to be extremely interactive with you folks. And I know that Andrew Gespricht, who is a mod here on Game Over Montreal, is also in the Discord on the Montreal public chat. And he's trying to get some traditions going during the game, before the game, to like get some hype and build some hype. So head on in there and interact as well. But yeah, the Patreon really helps us out. If you got a couple bucks, if you don't, that's okay. Your watch time is equally important, if not more so. Every interaction matters. All right. Zach Bolduc. It was mentioned, I think Ethan said that he did not love Bolduc on the top line. And yeah. He looked like he was kind of lost. It seemed at times where that Bolduc was kind of just going for a skate out there. And I'm not saying that as like him not trying. I think that would be bullshit. I think he's lost confidence. Like that's what he looks like to me, is a guy who doesn't have the confidence that he's going to complete plays. And because of that, he's second guessing his instincts and putting himself outside of position to be effective. So I'm seeing him behind the play a lot. I'm seeing him reactive instead of proactive. I'm not seeing the Zach Bolduc we saw early in the season that was a force out there every single night. I don't think that player is gone by any stretch. This is a funk, but something is up. Now, whether that's just in his head and maybe he needs to take a break, he was actually the only player on the Canadiens tonight who was below 50% on ice expected goal share. And that's while sharing the ice mostly with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield. That's not good enough. And, you know, as much as I liked Slaf with Demidov in this game, I totally understand going for the tying goal late in the game, St. Louis pulling Bolduc off. And that's the worst way to put it. Why do I phrase it that way? Pulling Bolduc off that line and putting Slafkovsky back on that top line, it made sense. But it's got to be a bit of a sting for Bolduc to not even get a full game with them. Like, the context makes sense. I'm guessing there's a possibility we'll see him get another chance in the next game. But whether it's an injury that he needs to take a minute and heal from, or it's, you know, something going on up there with the confidence, he's got to find himself a little bit here. And if anyone can get him going, it's probably Suzuki and Caulfield. But without Slafkovsky, with Bolduc there having a tough time, they really got dragged down tonight. And the Canadiens can't afford those two guys to be below par. They can't have them below par and win games. It's just the facts. So Bolduc is not going to have a huge runway on that line if he can't figure it out quickly, I don't think. As unfair as that is, considering the amount of patience so many other players get on this team, in that situation, you kind of got to produce right away, and it was not great. Wasn't Bolduc the GOAT for Werenski's goal? I think he was out of position, but Dobson was in position to cover for him and backed off completely instead, which was regrettable. And even then, like, as much as they gave Werenski a lot of time and space to shoot, Dobeš has to have that shot. Like, a wrist shot, mostly unscreened from the top of the face-off circle. The puck's not moving laterally. Yeah, you have to telescope in and out to cover the distance of, like, the angle as he's moving inward. But I didn't like Dobeš on that play. I really didn't. I also didn't like on the third goal that the pass went through Dobeš and Carrier's space before it was tipped in. I thought they should have gotten away with that too. But the Canadiens have been very porous defensively and offensively compared to earlier in the season in pass lane interruption, right? Getting in those passing lanes and stopping the puck from getting through. They've really struggled lately. Hopefully they figure it out. It seemed like in the third they had figured it out because they had Columbus on their heels the whole period. Montreal MFC says, nah, that was Suzuki going in the wrong spot while Dobson gave away too much space. Yeah, so it was Suzuki who, that's right, it was in the middle of the ice. It was Suzuki. Sometimes it's hard to track who's at fault defensively for the Canadiens because they play that man-on-man system and they can get total wacky position-wise, right? Especially guys like Matheson, who half the time you see up at the blue line checking guys instead of near the net. Kay says, Josh Anderson top line again. I mean, he never got on the top line. I guess he was the guy that they chose to promote. Oh God, I hope they don't do that. Kay, don't put that evil out into the world. That's bad for both the top line and Anderson. Like, he doesn't succeed with them either. That's the problem. And he plays well with Jake Evans. I don't think they'll pull him away from Evans. I think you might see Gallagher as a stopgap. He's kind of the guy who's insulating the young ones right now and making Veleno look not as bad, but you might see Gallagher. But what do you guys think of Bolduc's situation? Like, what would you do with him right now? Because I'm not entirely sure. I'm really not sure what the answer is for getting Bolduc going, whether it's putting him with Demidov. I mean, I think you want to stick with Slaf there if you're not in a trailing situation right now while you're dealing with all these injuries. Like, could you put him on a kid line and then because you're giving him responsibility of being the veteran, maybe that brings some of his confidence back? You know, you can put him, maybe you call up Owen Beck and you put him and Waugh with Bolduc. That could be a line that could work maybe. But there's no easy situation for him right now, especially with Dach out. because him and Dach had developed a bit of chemistry, but Bolduc was falling apart before Dach went down. Yeah, Denny, until then, I don't know. That case says double shift Slaf. May as well. Because Denny is saying put Dach with Caulfield and Suzuki when, they've done it before. It could work, especially if they want to give Slaf the opportunity to work with Demidov. Like, that's interesting. Piano Matt says, yeah, I wasn't sure why Dobson kept backing up since no one was challenging Werenski. It was a weird goal, man. Like, sometimes the Habs are just an adventure defensively. All right, let's switch over to overtime so I can go back and forth with you guys and not feel like I'm doing a bad job hosting. Oh, man. Can you tell it's late? All right, we're in overtime on Game Over Montreal. I am Andrew Berkshire. Please like this stream. Please appreciate the new studio. I will, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move. Nope, that's not what I'm going to do at all. I'm going to move the chat over to the other side and cover up Ken Dryden. Sorry, Ken. I apologize. So that I can show you guys the rest of the new studio here because I moved things around at home. And now I've got my old Budweiser goal light that I got when I was the managing editor of Habs Eyes on the Prize, which is why here you can't really see with the light, but it does say Eyes on the Prize on here. It's a special edition. Unfortunately, it doesn't work anymore. It needs new batteries, and I think it needs to be rewired or something because they weren't built to last. It used to actually go off when the Habs would score, which scared the ever-loving shit out of my wife, but it hasn't in many, many years now. And then these are my retired boxing gloves, the first that I ever bought. They lasted 3 years. I made them last extra long by stuffing my wife's old bra pads in them. I'm sure I'm the only boxer, at least male boxer, to try that out. And that actually gave me like an extra 6 months of not breaking my knuckles. But they are done now. I've got new ones. So let's hit up the chat here and answer some questions if you have any. All right, Joe the Snoop says, thanks heaps, Andrew. Hey, you're welcome. I don't know what you're thanking me for, just hosting the show, but I love doing this because, frankly, it's fun. It's a good after-game chill sesh. We get to go over what happened. We can be pissed off together or happy together or, gain catharsis together. I feel like this is more of a hangout / group therapy sesh where we're all in here together than it is like your typical post game where it's all just like fire and brimstone and what went wrong and who are we angry at today. I feel like we have such a special atmosphere here. Montreal MUFC says, Benoit Gru just left his KHL team for personal reasons. Anyone thinks we can do with him as more experienced assistant coach who can catch details and then help everyone adjust on the fly? It's an interesting idea. I have no idea what the personality situation is there. I don't know if the personal reasons are scandal related or he just didn't want to live in Russia anymore. Who knows? But I'm always interested to see what people think the coaching staff can add because it is a coaching staff that's growing together, right? Like they are much like the team itself in that most of these coaches weren't very experienced before they came to Montreal, including Martin St. Louis. I talked about this recently, but people always say the NHL is not a development league, and Martin St. Louis has come in here with the Canadiens and said, screw all of that. I'm going to develop prospects in the NHL. I'm going to develop veterans to be better players in the NHL, and I'm going to develop myself as a coach while we're rebuilding a team in the NHL, and he continues to do that. So while there's been struggles lately and I have some criticisms of Marty St. Louis and others have criticisms of Marty St. Louis that are valid, I remain impressed by his ability to do whatever people say he can't do and succeed. And I'm biased in favor of the short people with a chip on their shoulder. I happen to be one of those myself. But I truly do believe in Marty St. Louis, and I think this coaching staff continues to improve. As much as they have problems, where I see established coaches in the NHL often come in and the message gets lost, this coaching staff seems to only have a stronger message every season, and the players are more and more receptive. as they see the results of what this coaching staff is trying to accomplish. And maybe that changes as the Canadiens grow as a team and there's some changes that need to be made. But as it stands right now, I kind of enjoy the patience that they've had. Ethan says, nice to have a spot to debrief the games. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a spot that's not just about, rage, right? It's introspective. We're trying to do cool stuff that other people don't do. We'll call people out if they need to be called out, whether it's the refs or players with SA allegations or, convictions that somehow still get jobs. Joe the Snoop, I always say thanks, just like we do with bus drivers here. You know what? I love that. Thank everybody. I love that. That's great. Vaguely Stat says catharsis and group therapy best achieved via ball pit. Yes. I pitched that to Astrid and she's in. So I just got to find a date. Maybe April. I was thinking of some things to do for April 1st this year. I don't even know if the Canadiens have a game. I think they do. But I think we could do something fun. Good night, Claire. Have a good one. And Trinka, Marty St. Louis just bucks the NHL trends even in retirement. Yeah, it's truly impressive, right? He's going to end up in the Hockey Hall of Fame again as a builder. It's going to be crazy. Trinka says, look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. They've had so many coaches and they just won't play for them or each other. Yeah, I mean, do we want to get super deep on the Leafs late at night on a Habs show? Because I could. Because my theory on them is mean, except for Willie Nylander. I mean, not Tavares too, but Piano Matt says Habs do not play April 1st. Well, maybe we'll do an April 1st stream anyway. Yeah, we could get deep on the Leafs. Ethan says the Leafs vibe is so bad. Yeah, it is. It's so bad. Like, the vibes have always been kind of bad in Toronto. And you think about it, like, even when things were at their most positive, like there was always stuff going on around Mitch Marner. There was always like this unjustifiable hatred towards William Nylander. And Matthews is, as much as he's a phenomenal, unique, like franchise generational goal scorer, he just doesn't elevate in the playoffs. And if your best guys don't elevate and you never had the patience as an organization to build the rest of your club, you just banked on a couple of stars and went all in and said, we're in competitive mode now. And those guys don't elevate in the playoffs, except for Nylander. He's phenomenal. You're never going to win. Like, you have to have guys that have a care level that elevates with the moment. And the Leafs just haven't had that. Their big guys aren't big in the playoffs. Ethan says they don't seem to be having any fun. Fans and players alike. You're right about that too, Ethan. Like, I would say every Leafs fan would tell you that it's not fun being a Leafs fan. And that's just a sad thing. Because as much as being a Habs fan has had some major ups and downs over my lifetime. I'm 38 years old. I watched them win a Stanley Cup when I was, 7? 6? 93? And I can remember that. And there's DVDs of it that I own and I can watch. But that's nothing compared to like being a huge hyper fan in your teens and 20s and 30s and seeing a cup from that perspective. Because I followed the Colorado Avalanche when the Patrik Laine trade happened, much like the Subban trade where I kind of got pissed off and stopped caring about the Canadiens for a bit as a kid, even stronger. And seeing them win in 96 and then again in 2001 was like an exhilaration beyond what a 6-year-old understands, right? Staying up late. So not getting back to that point as a Habs fan, it's tough, right? You want to see them get there. We've had terrible trades, good trades, teams that should have been better. We've watched a Hall of Fame goaltender never have the team to get him over the hump. That sucks. But there's always fun moments as a Habs fan. It seems like there's always something. The Canadiens are a team that even in their years where they make the playoffs and they're not even good, they end up doing something special. Whether it's making a series that should be over really quickly last longer, or whether it's upsetting the first place Washington Capitals and then taking out Sidney Crosby and the Penguins in the next round. And yeah, it ends in disappointment, but because the Canadiens have enough success and enough surprise success as an organization, you can still enjoy the journey despite the eventual failure, just like 2021. Like, I'm sure everyone here is going to always remember the Artturi Lehkonen goal on Jean-Baptiste Day. Like, that is an iconic moment. The Toronto Maple Leafs have not had that moment since what? 93? No, like, they didn't even make the Stanley Cup final. So, like, that team is just perpetual depression. It sucks. It's like a toxin that leaches through the entire organization. I don't know what the fix is, but I think a complete overhaul similar to what the Canadiens did in bringing in Kent Hughes, and it has been a complete overhaul of how the Canadiens function as an organization. That is probably due, and I think Kyle Dubas tried to do that, but he wasn't actually the big dog. That was Brendan Shanahan, and Shanahan changed some things, but I think at the end of the day is still much more traditionally hockey than most people thought. Okay, good stick, Lecky. Yeah. God, I love Artturi Lehkonen. The man. Trinka says the Canadiens organization has belief and proof of concept. Yeah, exactly. Montreal MUFC says at least our Habs have had legendary runs even without cups. That's right. And you'll see people say things like, "Oh, you used to only care about Stanley Cups, and now you'll celebrate the small stuff." But yeah, like generationally, most Habs fans now that are at the games have not seen very many cups. It's just the facts. It's been a long time since they've won, and I think that lack and that long stretch of failure, which it's not all failure, but not getting to the final, not winning the Stanley Cup, is going to make the next one feel so special. It's a different world now than it was when the Canadiens won most of their cups in this league. And watching this team in and out through the losses, the wins, if you don't think they have a legit chance to win at least one Stanley Cup with this core, I don't believe you. I think people around the league even are pretty convinced of where this is going. There's just so much organizational depth and so much competence at the top that they have a very good chance. Nothing's a guarantee. Like the San Jose Sharks were probably the best team in the league for like 10 years and they never won. But they have a good chance. They have a very good chance. And that's all you can ask for as a fan, really. All right, folks, that's it for me tonight. Have a good night. We'll be back for the next one. As always, I'm Andrew Berkshire. This is Game Over Montreal. Please subscribe. Please hit like. Please listen to us as a podcast. If you don't like the videos, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and you can give us a little rating. It'll help us out. And if you really like us, head over to our Patreon and join our Discord and come hang out with our hosts and chat with us. We'll talk hockey. We'll talk whatever, man. Have a good one.